G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome back to Operation Hokkaido. Yes, once again it's time for the Americans and the British to play fight imaginary enemies over the island of Guam. And today we'll be taking out a rather rare aircraft. This is the Thunder League P-51A. This aircraft was available for a limited amount of time during the first Thunder League tournament as part of a competition. It was one of the end prizes to actually unlock, and it's based on a very interesting prototype. The P-51A Thunder League is based on a prototype turbocharged Allison engine Mustang. This is actually the kind of premium aircraft that I think Gaijin should focus on more, rather than just copy-pasting other nations' aircraft. Successful prototypes that weren't put into production for some reason. A far more interesting subject for a premium aircraft than just copy-pasting whatever nation's aircraft into a different tree. So, the P-51A Thunder League is significantly more powerful in the engine department than its other examples that are available in War Thunder. I'm talking about the cannon-armed early P-51 variants, one of which is in the US tree, and of course the premium in the British tree. It's also more powerful than the Apache that is also available in the US tree. However, it does have some drawbacks. While it is a much more powerful and a much lighter aircraft, it is lacking in the firepower department. The P-51A Thunder League is only armed with 4 50 caliber machine guns. 2 of the 50 cals that are normally in the early model Mustangs have been removed, and the ammunition for them has been removed. This does of course restrict the amount of damage that this P-51 is actually able to output, and its endurance in flight, as the ammunition does become scarce, and you do require more gun time on target with those 450 cals in order to effectively take your targets out. But it does actually help in the manoeuvring area, as the weight of this ammunition and guns has also been removed from the frame, making this the lightest example of the early P-51 models. And so the battle begins. Now, the P-51A Thunder League climbs like a champion. The light weight coupled with the powerful engine means getting this aircraft to altitude is not an issue. Coming in from 16,000 feet, I'm above the British team that is all at around the 10 to 12,000 foot area, and our first Spitfire is coming up. Long bursts do take some hits to the nose. It looks like I've taken some damage to the prop hub. Thankfully, that is an area that very rarely causes any issue to the aircraft itself. As long as the engine isn't damaged, the plane tends to continue flying just perfectly fine. However, that Spitfire, he has a few problems at this point. Now, the P-51A, much like most Mustangs, are designed primarily for boom and zoom combat, so rather than diving and trying to turn after the Spitfire, I take it back to altitude, punching 18,000 feet, and begin a long banking turn to find my next target. From this position, I am in no risk of Spitfires putting any severe threat on me unless they get to my altitude, which one of them actually does. But even in this situation, the threat is mitigated. The P-51 has a lot of outs. It dives like a boss, as most P-51s do. This thing will punch out past 700 kilometers an hour in a dive with very little in the way of issue. The second thing is the surprise factor. Most Spitfire pilots would expect seeing a P-51 to find it to be a rather non-maneuverable, non-responsive aircraft in a fight. But as I said before, the Thunder League P-51 has a more powerful engine. Horsepower always helps, but it's also a naturally lighter aircraft, the lightest example of the P-51 available in game. It is surprisingly nimble. It's no Spitfire, but if a Spitfire pilot is not expecting this maneuverability, you can give them a hard time. So I've pulled the P-51 into the vertical and stalled it around, apply combat flaps to bring the aircraft back around, and in the process I've stalled the 2B. However, he recovers fairly quickly and puts it into a sharp bank. He sees me managing to recover and bring guns around a target and immediately pulls into a sharp dive to pull in underneath me, and so the pursuit continues. Now, while this Mustang is more nimble than all of the other Mustangs, it is not a turn fighter. Now this Spitfire has seen me keeping up with him in the more gentle turns, he's going to be far more aggressive in his manoeuvring, and as you can see, he's just pulling straight out, dipping underneath. By the time I get this aircraft down, he's already going to be pulling the aircraft back into the vertical. I do get one more moment here to try and get guns on target, but I just couldn't quite get them around enough, and at this point we have just changed energy states. He is now above me, he now has the energy advantage, and I'm not going to be able to recover it. He also has a second Spitfire coming in for backup. So at this point I don't try and recover in the turns, I just point the Mustang at the ground and open up the throttle, punching out past 740 kilometers an hour and pick a fresh target. Now I'm coming in so fast I'm only going to have a split second to aim here, and I managed to get hits on, but again only 450 caliber machine gun, so I'm not going to vaporize the aircraft in one pass. but I do have so much speed on at this point that I can put the aircraft back into a gentle climb and still open the gap on the Spitfires to my rear, retaking altitude, while at the same time keeping my distance, allowing me to reposition to manoeuvre in. And it seems the Spitfire I was dueling with before has recognised that he's not going to be able to catch me, so he has gone off to look for other targets. So at this point there are 3 targets down by the river. I'm going to let the one I was fighting with go. He looks like he's far more interested in the fight happening over the other side of the island. And I'm honestly more interested in trying to save my teammates at this time. We have 2 Spitfires on the deck, at least one of them is a Spitfire 5B, and we have an F4U and a P-38 trying to turn fight them at low altitude, and this is not going to end well for my allies, so I'm going to try and see if we can rescue them. Closest Spitfire is primary target. He's pulling on the back of the P-38, so I'm going for him first. And it looks like the P-38 has taken serious damage. He's billowing smoke. Take the lead, and it looks like both of them are Spitfire 5Bs. Now I managed to rip the guns across him fairly easily there, reline up on the second Spitfire and continue through, get a good long burst and take the target out and pull the Mustang straight back into the vertical. Pull through a loop to re-dive through. The second Spitfire is still in the back of the P-38. The Corsair has now moved in to provide the P-38 some cover, but at this point I'm very much committed to continuing the attack. Now, I almost mess it up here. The Spitfire pulls it into the vertical and he actually stalls the aircraft out. I have the opportunity to rip the guns through, but I don't manage to execute him on the pass. But he doesn't manage to recover from the damage anyway and puts it into the ground. So that is my 3rd kill. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to save the P-38, however the F4U is still alive and able to engage in the battle. Now, a TBF over there is looking at 2 Spitfires, and we look like we have a couple of people that are returning to base, an A-36 and an A-20G, and a 3rd aircraft. I believe it is also an A-20G as well. Now, while I'd never underestimate the defensive capabilities of any of those aircraft, that is still 2 Spitfires over there. So, retake the Mustang for altitude, and you can see how quickly this thing climbs. Just hold the WEP, sit it at 300 kilometers an hour, and rip yourself back to altitude. I do really like the paint job on this one too, although I think it looks a lot better with the period RAAF Randalls and the kangaroo on the tail. It's definitely a paint job that doesn't scream subtlety. So at this point my oil is finally starting to overheat, so pull back off on the weapon, just let it cool down a little bit and shallow up my climb. I want to start building airspeed even without the WEP. I don't need the altitude so much at this point. Both Spitfires are now down on the deck. Whiskey, the Spitfire pilot I was dueling with before, apparently hasn't seen me coming in and was willing to sacrifice the altitude in order to engage the A-36 down there. Now, his performance in the little duel we had earlier on tells me that he is a fairly good pilot. He definitely knows what he's doing with his Spitfire, so I'm hoping for a really good battle here. Force the aircraft back into a slightly higher climb again. I'm decided I'm going to take it out to 8,000 feet. Spitfires can climb rapidly, so I want to make sure that there is no chance that he can get above me, so I have total control over the engagement when I finally get to him. At this point, he is the last Spitfire remaining on the enemy team. Now at this point we are starting to cap their bases, the point scores are about the same, and we definitely have an advantage in terms of aircraft, so I'm in no rush to dive in on this Spitfire. I'm going to take time to position myself in exactly the right spot for what I want to do. He's making a pass at the A-20G, and that is a risky proposition. That's a really fast aircraft with a lot of 50 caliber machine guns, so that is taking a risk. Now I'm going to pull the aircraft up slightly into a climb as I pass over the top. As I said, Spitfires can climb rapidly. He's only 1.5 kilometers below me, and at this point pull it into a corkscrew before initiating my dive. Now the Spitfire is trying to get up to my altitude rapidly, and this is going to cost him dearly. He's pulled up almost vertical into a burst and opened himself up to my guns. Now I don't kill him on that pass, again, only 450 caliber machine guns, so there's only so much damage you can apply in such a short period of time, but as you can see, I've popped his cooling system. I've still got 400 kilometers an hour in terms of speed, so a nice, long, smooth loop into a dive, and this was a silly mistake. A vertical head-on with the diving Mustang. That was only going to ever end one way. And with the elimination of that Spitfire, that is the end of this match. So, let's go through to the results. So, first place for the team with 4 kills, 2,612 point score for the match. Fighter Rescuer, Avenger, Multi-Strike X2, Shadow Strike Streak X2, Final Blow, Terror of the Sky, The Best Squad, Balancer and Bulletproof, 77,765 Silver Lions, and 6,353 research points, which went into nothing as I had nothing to research. So, the Thunder League P-51A, it's a fantastic aircraft, it really is. I did have some problems with it when it first was released. Its biggest issue was the aircraft didn't roll around its own center axis, it was rolling around the head of the pilot. Thankfully, that seems to be a problem that has been solved sometime between the release of the aircraft from the first Thunder League tournament and today when I flew this aircraft out. Which is honestly a good thing. The off-center roll was one of my biggest complaints with the aircraft when it first came out, and what actually turned me off using it in combat. This is an aircraft that I'm probably going to fly out a lot more often now. However, it does make me a little sad. I don't normally advocate adding more aircraft to War Thunder at this point, especially when there is so much that needs to be done to the game in order to balance it. But where are the early model P-51Bs and Cs armed with 50 cals? At the moment, the only early model Mustang examples that we have in game that actually carry the name Mustang is this, and the two cannon-armed versions. The Apache can almost be included in, same airframe, different name, equipped with air brakes, but where are the Mustang Bs and Cs? These are classic Mustangs. These are aircraft that I thought would have been added into the game some time ago, yet here we are and they're still not there. And it is a shame, because I really do like those early Mustangs. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and until next time, click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more, fly smart, fly safe, and I will catch you in the skies.